The city square buzzed with noise cars honking, people chattering, and street musicians playing for coins. But one voice cut through it all, sharp and fearless. "You're a liar!" shouted a girl, her voice trembling with anger. She stood in the middle of the crowd, her clothes torn and dirty, her hair a wild mess. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Please subscribe to my channel for more sweet videos like this. Let the story continue. Her name was Lily, and she was homeless. She pointed a shaking finger at a man in a fancy suit, his shiny shoes gleaming under the sun. That man was Victor Kane, the richest man in the city, a millionaire everyone knew from TV. The crowd gasped. No one dared talk to Victor like that. Lily's eyes burned with fire. "You said you'd help people like me. You promised," she yelled. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "You're lying to everyone, and I'm going to prove it." Victor's face turned red. His smile, the one he always flashed for cameras, vanished. The crowd froze, waiting for what he'd do next. Would he yell back, call the police, or just walk away? But Victor did something no one expected. He stepped closer to Lily, his eyes locked on hers, and said, "Prove it then." His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in it, like a storm waiting to break. Lily's heart pounded. She hadn't planned this far. She'd only wanted to scream the truth, to make someone listen. Now, Victor Kane was challenging her, and the whole city was watching. What had she just started? The crowd leaned in, whispering. Lily felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on her. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Victor raised an eyebrow, waiting. Then, he turned to the crowd and said, "This girl says I'm a liar. Should we let her prove it?" The crowd cheered, hungry for drama. Lily's stomach twisted. What was Victor planning? Why wasn't he angry? And what would he do next? The story didn't start here, in the middle of the city square, with Lily shouting at a millionaire. It began 2 weeks ago, in the quiet, forgotten corners of the city, where no one important ever looked. Lily was 12 years old, small for her age, with big brown eyes that saw everything. She'd been homeless for 2 years, ever since her mom got sick and they lost their tiny apartment. Lily didn't talk about that much. It hurt too much. Instead, she survived. She knew which alleys had the warmest spots to sleep, which restaurants threw out food at night, and how to stay invisible. But Lily wasn't just surviving, she was watching. And what she saw made her angry. Every night, Lily passed a giant billboard with Victor Kane's face on it. He was always smiling, his teeth perfect, his suit crisp. The billboard said, "Victor Kane, building a better city for everyone." Underneath were words about his charity, Kane Cares, which promised to help the poor, feed the hungry, and give homes to the homeless. Lily hated that billboard. She'd seen Victor on TV, talking about how much he cared about the city. But where was the help? Lily still slept on the cold ground. Her friends, other homeless kids, still dug through trash for food. If Victor was helping, why was nothing changing? One night, Lily sat under the billboard, eating a half-rotten apple she'd found. She stared up at Victor's face and whispered, "You're a liar." It felt good to say it, even if no one heard. But saying it to herself wasn't enough anymore. Lily wanted answers. She started paying closer attention. She listened to people talking about Victor, watched news clips on the library's free computers, and even snuck into a fancy event where Victor was speaking. That's when she heard something that changed everything. It was a chilly evening, and Lily had slipped into the back of a big hotel ballroom. Victor was on stage, talking to a crowd of rich people in sparkly dresses and suits. Lily hid behind a curtain, her heart racing. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she needed to hear him. Victor's voice boomed through the room. "Kane Cares is my heart and soul," he said. "We've already helped thousands of people. Soon, we'll build new shelters, new schools, a new future for this city." The crowd clapped loudly. Lily's hands clenched into fists. Shelters? She'd never seen a single one. Then, after the speech, Lily saw something strange. Victor stepped off the stage and met a man in a dark suit. They whispered, thinking no one could hear, but Lily was close, hidden in the shadows. The man said, "The money's safe, Victor. No one's asking questions." Victor nodded and said, "Good, keep it that way." Lily's heart skipped a beat. Money? What money? Was Victor hiding something? She didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong. She slipped out of the hotel, her mind racing. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Victor's words, his smile, and that secret conversation. She had to find out the truth. Over the next week, Lily became a detective. She didn't have a badge or a fancy office, just her brain and her courage. She started following Victor's trail. She went to the library every day, searching for anything about Kane Cares. She found articles saying the charity had raised millions of dollars. Millions? But where was it going? Lily talked to other homeless kids and adults, asking if they'd ever gotten help from Kane Cares. No one had. "It's all talk," said an old man named Joe who slept by the river. "Rich people like him don't care about us." Lily wasn't so sure. Victor seemed too smart to just lie for no reason. Maybe he was doing something worse. Maybe he was keeping the money for himself. The thought made her stomach hurt. She didn't have proof, not yet, but she couldn't stop now. She started writing down everything she learned in a little notebook she'd found in the trash. She called it her truth book. Every night, she added new clues, things she heard, things she saw, things that didn't add up. The more she learned, the angrier she got. Victor was lying to the whole city, and no one was stopping him. Then, one morning, something happened that pushed Lily over the edge. She was walking through the city square, her stomach growling. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Up ahead, she saw a big crowd and heard music. It was a Kane Cares event. Victor was there, standing on a stage, smiling at the cameras. "We're changing lives," he said. "Kane Cares is here for everyone," the crowd cheered. Lily felt her face get hot. She looked around and saw other homeless people watching from the edges, their faces tired and hopeless. Victor didn't even look at them. He was too busy posing for pictures. That's when Lily snapped. She pushed through the crowd, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was going to say, but she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She climbed onto a bench in the middle of the square and shouted, "You're a liar!" The words echoed, and the crowd went silent. All eyes turned to her. Victor's smile froze. For a moment, it was just him and Lily, staring at each other. She'd done it. She'd called him out. But now what? Victor's challenge. Prove it then. Hung in the air like a dare. The crowd was buzzing, waiting for Lily's next move. She felt small and scared, but she couldn't back down. "I know what you're doing," she said, her voice shaking. "You're not helping anyone. You're keeping the money." The crowd gasped again. Victor's eyes narrowed, but he didn't yell or call for security. Instead, he stepped off the stage and walked toward her. The crowd parted, making way. Lily's legs felt like jelly, but she stood her ground. When Victor reached her, he leaned down so only she could hear. "You're playing a dangerous game, kid," he whispered. "You don't know what you're talking about." His voice was cold, like ice. Then he straightened up and smiled at the crowd. "This girl deserves a chance to speak," he said loudly. "Let's hear her proof." The crowd cheered again, but Lily's heart sank. Victor was turning this into a show. He wasn't scared. He was in control. Or was he? Lily clutched her truth book, hidden in her pocket. She hadn't shown anyone her clues yet. Maybe she could use them now. But what if Victor laughed at her? What if no one believed her? She looked at the crowd, their faces, a mix of curiosity and doubt. Then she saw Joe, the old man from the river, standing at the back. He nodded at her, like he was saying, "You can do this." Lily took a deep breath. She was about to speak when Victor did something that made her blood run cold. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "You say I don't help people?" he said, holding it up for the crowd to see. "This is $10,000. I was going to donate it to Kane Cares today, but Maybe, he paused, looking at Lily. Maybe I should give it to you. If you can prove I'm lying, the crowd roared. Lily's eyes widened. $10,000? That could change her life. She could eat, find a place to sleep, and stay warm. But something about Victor's offer felt wrong. Why was he so confident? Was this a trick? Lily's mind raced. She had to decide take the money and walk away, or keep fighting for the truth. The crowd was chanting her name now. Lily, Lily! Victor stood there, holding the envelope, his smile sharp as a knife. What would she do next? Lily stood frozen, her heart thumping like a drum. The crowd's chants of, Lily, Lily, echoed in her ears, but all she could see was Victor Kane, holding that thick envelope of money. $10,000. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of. She could buy warm clothes, eat real food, maybe even find a safe place to sleep. But his smile sharp and sly made her skin crawl. This wasn't a gift. It was a trap. Victor was daring her to take the money and shut up, or keep talking and risk everything. The crowd didn't see it, but Lily did. She clutched her truth book tighter in her pocket. She'd come too far to back down now. I don't want your money, she said, her voice small but steady. The crowd gasped, then went quiet. Victor's smile faltered, just for a second. I want the truth, Lily went on, louder now. You say you help people, but where's the proof? Where are the shelters? Where's the food you promised? Her words hit like stones, and the crowd started whispering. Some nodded, others looked confused. Victor's eyes narrowed, but he kept his cool. Brave words, he said, tucking the envelope back into his pocket. But talk is cheap. If you have proof, show it. Right now. He spread his arms, inviting her to speak, like he was giving her the stage. The crowd leaned in, hungry for more. Lily's stomach twisted. She hadn't planned to share her truth book yet. It was just a bunch of scribbled notes, things she'd overheard, articles she'd read, questions that didn't add up. It wasn't enough to prove anything. Not yet. But Victor was forcing her hand. She pulled the notebook from her pocket, her hand shaking. It was small, with a torn cover and pages smudged with dirt. The crowd murmured, some laughing softly. It didn't look like much. Lily's cheeks burned, but she opened it and held it up. I've been watching you, she said, pointing at Victor. You say Kane Cares helps people, but I talked to homeless people. None of them got help. I read about your charity. You raised millions, but there's no new shelters. Where's the money going? The crowd's whispers grew louder. A few people clapped. Others shook their heads. Victor didn't flinch. A notebook? He said, chuckling. That's your proof? Some scribbles from a kid who doesn't understand how the world works? His voice was smooth, like he was talking to a child who'd spilled juice. The crowd laughed with him, and Lily felt her face get hot. She wanted to shrink away, but she thought of Joe's nod, of her mom's voice telling her to be brave. She wasn't done. It's not just scribbles, she shot back. I heard you. At the hotel 2 weeks ago. You were talking to a man about money. You said, keep it safe. No one's asking questions. What money? Why are you hiding it? The crowd went silent again. Victor's smile froze, and for the first time, he looked rattled. It was only a flicker, but Lily saw it. She'd hit something. The man in the dark suit, the secret whisper she'd caught him off guard. Victor recovered fast. He laughed, louder this time, and turned to the crowd. This girl has quite the imagination, he said. Eavesdropping on private conversations and making up stories. Should we clap for her creativity? Some people laughed, but others didn't. A woman in the crowd shouted, Let her talk. A man nearby nodded. Yeah. What's the money for, Kane? The mood was shifting. Lily's heart raced. She was gaining ground, but she could feel Victor's eyes on her, sharp and dangerous. He stepped closer, his voice low so only she could hear. You're digging a hole, kid. Stop now, or you'll regret it. His words sent a chill down her spine. She remembered what he'd said before about playing a dangerous game. But She was already in too deep. She stepped back and raised her voice. If I'm wrong, prove it. Show us where the money's going. Open your books. Let everyone see. The crowd erupted, some cheering for Lily, others shouting at Victor. It was chaos. Victor raised his hands, calling for quiet. All right, he said, his smile back in place. You want proof? I'll give you proof. But not here. Not like this. He paused, looking at Lily. You say you want the truth? Come to my office tomorrow. Bring your little book. I'll show you everything, every dollar, every project. If I'm lying, you'll know. Deal? Lily blinked. Was he serious? The crowd was buzzing again, excited by the drama. She didn't trust him. Not one bit. Why would he invite her to his office? Was he really going to show her proof? Or was this another trick? She looked at the crowd, then at Joe, who was watching from the back. He gave her a small nod, but his eyes were worried. Lily swallowed hard. Deal, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The crowd roared. Victor clapped his hands. Wonderful. Tomorrow 10 a.m., Kane Tower. Don't be late. He turned to the crowd, flashing his famous smile. Let's give this brave girl a hand. The crowd clapped, some cheering, others still whispering. Victor waved, then walked back to his stage, surrounded by his team. Lily stood there, clutching her notebook, her legs wobbly. What had she just agreed to? As the crowd started to break up, Joe pushed through to reach her. You okay, kid? He asked, his voice gruff but kind. Lily nodded, but she wasn't sure. I don't trust him, she whispered. Joe sighed. You shouldn't. Victor Kane's slippery as an eel. But you got his attention. That's something. He looked at her notebook. You got more in there? Something solid? Lily bit her lip. Not enough. Not yet. Joe patted her shoulder. Then you better find more, and fast. Tomorrow's gonna be a fight. Lily spent the rest of the day in a daze. She walked back to her usual spot, an alley behind a bakery where the owner sometimes left bread for her. She sat on the cold ground, her truth book open in her lap. She read through her notes again, looking for anything she'd missed. There were the articles about Kane Cares, the whispers she'd overheard, the stories from other homeless people. But it was all bits and pieces. She needed something, big something, that would prove Victor was lying, not just to her, but to everyone. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. The city was loud, with sirens and voices in the distance. She kept thinking about Victor's offer. Why was he so confident? What was he hiding? She remembered his whisper, "You're digging a hole." It scared her, but it also made her angry. He thought she was just a kid, someone he could scare or bribe. But Lily wasn't giving up. She'd lost too much already, her mom, her home, her old life. She wasn't going to lose this fight. The next morning, Lily woke up early. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She washed her face in a public fountain and tried to smooth her tangled hair. She wanted to look strong, not like a scared kid. Kane Tower was across the city, a giant glass building that sparkled in the sun. Lily had never been inside, but she'd seen it from the streets. It looked like a castle, untouchable and cold. As she walked toward it, her truth book in her pocket, she felt like a knight going to face a dragon. When she reached the tower, the doors were huge, made of glass and steel. A security guard stood outside, eyeing her dirty clothes. You got business here? He asked, his voice rough. Lily stood tall. Victor Kane invited me. My name's Lily. The guard raised an eyebrow but checked a list on his clipboard. Huh, you're on here. Go in. He opened the door, and Lily stepped inside. The lobby was like nothing she'd ever seen. The floor was shiny marble, and a giant chandelier hung from the ceiling, sparkling like stars. People in suits rushed around, their shoes clicking. Lily felt small and out of place, but she kept walking. A woman in a sharp blazer met her at a desk. You're Lily? She asked, looking her up and down. Lily nodded. The woman smiled, but it wasn't warm. Mr. Kane's waiting. Follow me. They took an elevator that shot up so fast, Lily's stomach flipped. When the doors opened, she was on the top floor. The hallway was quiet, with soft carpet and walls covered in fancy art. At the end was a huge wooden door. The woman knocked, then opened it. "Go in," she said. Lily took a deep breath and stepped inside. Victor's office was massive. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the whole city below. Victor sat behind a giant desk, his suit perfect, his smile back in place. "Lily," he said, standing up. "Right on time. Welcome." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, let's talk." Lily didn't move. She clutched her notebook, her heart racing. The door closed behind her with a soft click. She was alone with Victor Kane. "So," Victor said, leaning back in his chair, "you think I'm a liar. You've got your little book. Show me what you've got." His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, watching her every move. Lily's mouth went dry. This was her chance. But something felt wrong. Why was he so relaxed? What was he planning? She opened her notebook, her hands trembling. "I know you're not using the money for what you say," she started. "I heard you at the hotel. You talked about keeping money safe. And I checked, there's no new shelters, no programs, nothing." Victor listened, his face unreadable. When she finished, he leaned forward, his hands folded. "Interesting," he said. "But that's not proof. That's a story. You need more than that to take me down." Lily's heart sank. He was right. She didn't have enough. Not yet. But she wasn't going to let him win. "Then show me your proof," she said, glaring at him. "You said you'd show me everything. Where's the money going?" Victor smiled, slow and dangerous. "Oh, I'll show you," he said. "But first, let's make this fun." He reached into his desk and pulled out a key. It was small, gold, and shiny. "This key," he said, holding it up, "unlocks the truth. Want to find out what's behind the door?" Lily stared at the key, her pulse racing. A door? What door? Was this another trick, or was he really going to show her something? Victor stood up, walked to a wall, and pressed a hidden button. A panel slid open, revealing a metal door with a keyhole. "Come on, Lily," he said, his voice almost playful. "Let's see how brave you really are." He stepped toward the door, the key glinting in his hand. Lily's heart pounded. She didn't trust him, not one bit, but this was her chance to find the truth. She took a step forward, then stopped. Something in Victor's eyes made her freeze. He wasn't scared. He was excited. What was behind that door? And what would happen if she followed him? Lily's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the metal door in Victor Kane's office. It looked heavy, cold, and out of place in the fancy room, with its shiny windows and soft carpet. The gold key in Victor's hand glinted under the light, like it was daring her to move closer. His words echoed in her head, "Let's see how brave you really are." Lily's legs felt like they might give out, but she couldn't show it. Not now. Not when she was this close to the truth. She tightened her grip on her truth book and took a shaky step forward. Victor's smile grew wider, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before it pounces. "That's the spirit," he said, twirling the key between his fingers. "Behind this door is everything you want to know about Kane Cares. Every dollar, every plan. Ready to see it?" His voice was smooth, but there was a challenge in it, like he didn't think she'd dare. Lily's stomach twisted. She didn't trust him, not one bit. But if she walked away now, she'd never know what he was hiding, and she'd never forgive herself. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice sharper than she felt. Victor raised an eyebrow like he was impressed. "Smart girl," he said. "No catch. Just a simple deal. You come with me, see the truth, and decide for yourself if I'm lying, but—" He paused, leaning closer. "If you're wrong, you stop this little crusade. No more yelling in the square, no more stories about me. You take the money I offered yesterday and disappear. Deal?" Lily's heart raced. Disappear? That word hit her like a punch. She'd heard it before, from kids on the street who'd crossed the wrong people. People like Victor didn't make deals like this unless they were sure they'd win. But what choice did she have? She needed proof, and that door might be her only shot. She looked at the key, then at Victor's face. His eyes were locked on hers, waiting. "Fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Deal." Victor clapped his hands, the sound loud in the quiet room. "Excellent," he said, like they'd just agreed to get ice cream. He turned to the door and slid the key into the lock. It clicked, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. A cold draft slipped out, making Lily shiver. The hallway was narrow, with bare walls and a single light bulb flickering at the far end. It didn't look like part of the shiny Kane Tower. It looked like a secret. "After you," Victor said, stepping aside. Lily hesitated. Every part of her screamed not to go in, but she thought of Joe, of her mom, of all the people Victor might be hurting with his lies. She took a deep breath and stepped into the hallway. Victor followed, closing the door behind them. The click of the lock echoed, and Lily's heart skipped a beat. There was no turning back now. The hallway was colder than the office, and the air smelled like dust and metal. Lily's sneakers squeaked on the concrete floor as she walked. Victor's shiny shoes clicked behind her, steady and calm. "Not much farther," he said, his voice echoing. "You're going to love this." Lily didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the flickering light ahead, her hand brushing the wall to steady herself. The hallway turned a corner, and at the end was another door, this one, plain and wooden, with no lock. Victor stepped past her and pushed it open. "Welcome to the heart of Kane Cares," he said, his voice almost cheerful. Lily stepped inside and froze. The room was huge, like a warehouse, with high ceilings and shelves stretching to the walls. But it wasn't what she expected. There were no files, no computers, no papers showing where the money went. Instead, the shelves were piled with boxes, hundreds of them, labeled with words like supplies, food, and clothing. In the middle of the room were tables covered with more boxes, some open, spilling out blankets and cans of food. Lily's mouth dropped open. "What is this?" she asked, her voice small. Victor spread his arms like he was showing off a prize. "This is Kane Cares," he said. "Everything we've been collecting for the city's homeless. Food, clothes, blankets all ready to be delivered. You said I wasn't helping. Well, here's the proof." He picked up a can of soup from a table and tossed it to her. She caught it, her hands shaking. The label was real, the can heavy. It looked like something she'd dig out of a dumpster on a good day. Lily's head spun. This couldn't be right. If Victor was really helping, why hadn't she seen it? Why were her friends still hungry? She set the can down and walked to a shelf, pulling open a box labeled clothing. Inside were jackets, scarves, and socks, all neatly folded. Her fingers brushed a soft blue scarf, and for a second, she imagined wearing it, feeling warm for the first time in months. But then she stopped. Something was off. The boxes were dusty, like they'd been sitting there for a long time. And the room was too quiet, too empty. Where were the workers? The trucks? The people making sure this stuff got to the streets? She turned to Victor, her eyes narrowing. If this is all for the homeless, why isn't it out there? Why are people still starving? Victor's smile didn't waver. "Logistics, Lily," he said, like it was obvious. "It takes time to organize. We're building new shelters, training staff. This is just the start." He walked to a table and picked up a blanket, holding it out to her. "Take this. Try it. You'll see it's real." Lily didn't take it. She stepped back, her mind racing. Logistics? That sounded like an excuse. She thought about her truth book, about the man in the dark suit, about Victor's whisper. Keep it safe. This room looked real, but it felt like a show, like something he'd set up to trick her. "You're still lying," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "This isn't the whole story. Where's the money? The millions you raised?" Victor's smile faded, just for a moment. "You're stubborn," he said, tossing the blanket back on the table. "I show you proof, and you still don't believe me. What more do you want?" His voice was sharper now, like he was losing patience. Lily's heart pounded. She was pushing him, and she didn't know how far she could go, but she couldn't stop. "Show me the books," she said. "The real ones. Every dollar you spent. If you're telling the truth, you won't mind." Victor stared at her, his eyes cold. For a second, she thought he might yell or grab her, but then he laughed, loud and sharp. "You don't give up, do you?" he said. He walked to a corner of the room and pulled a small laptop from a shelf. "Fine. You want numbers? I'll give you numbers." He opened the laptop, typed something, and turned the screen to her. It showed a spreadsheet with rows of numbers and words like donations, expenses, and distributions. The totals were huge millions of dollars, just like the article said. Lily leaned closer, squinting at the screen. The numbers looked real, but she didn't know what they meant. She wasn't a math expert. She needed time to think, to check her notes. "Can I take a picture?" she asked, reaching for her pocket. She didn't have a phone, but maybe she could borrow one later. Victor snapped the laptop shut. "No pictures," he said, his voice hard. "This is private. You wanted to see it. You saw it. Now, do you believe me?" Lily's stomach sank. "No pictures?" That wasn't right. If he was telling the truth, why hide it? She took a step back, her hand on her truth book. "I don't believe you," she said. "You're hiding something. I know it." Victor's face changed. The smile was gone, replaced by something darker. He stepped closer, towering over her. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low. "I've been nice, Lily. I showed you more than I had to. But if you keep pushing, you'll wish you hadn't." Lily's heart raced. She was alone in this room, with no one to help her. The door was far away, and Victor was between her and it. She thought about running, but her legs felt heavy. Then she remembered Joe's words. "Tomorrow's gonna be a fight." He was right. This was a fight, and she wasn't backing down. "I'm not scared of you," she lied, her voice trembling. "I'll keep looking. I'll find the truth." Victor stared at her, his eyes like ice. Then, to her surprise, he stepped back and smiled again. "All right," he said, his voice calm. "Keep looking, but don't say I didn't warn you." He walked to the door and opened it, gesturing for her to leave. "Go on. You're free to go. For now." Lily's legs moved before her brain caught up. She hurried out, clutching her notebook, her heart pounding. The hallway felt longer going back, the flickering light colder. Victor didn't follow, but she could feel his eyes on her. When she reached the elevator, the woman in the blazer was waiting. "Done already?" she asked, her smile fake. Lily didn't answer. She got in the elevator, her mind spinning. The room, the boxes, the laptop pit all looked real, but it wasn't. She knew it. Victor was playing a game, and she'd just walked right into it. But what was his plan? Why let her go? And what did he mean by "for now"? Back on the street, the city felt louder, brighter, overwhelming. Lily's stomach growled, and her head hurt. She needed to think, to figure out her next move. She walked to the library, her safe place, and sat at a computer. She opened her truth book and started writing everything she'd seen: the room, the boxes, the laptop, Victor's words. She needed more clues, something solid, but where could she look? As she typed, a shadow fell over her. She looked up and saw Joe, his face serious. "Heard you went to Kane Tower," he said, sitting next to her. "You okay?" Lily nodded, but her hands were shaking. "He showed me stuff," she said. "Food, clothes, a laptop with numbers. But it's not right. I know he's lying." Joe frowned. "You sure?" Lily nodded. "I need proof, Joe. Something big." Joe leaned back, thinking. "There's a place," he said slowly. "An old warehouse by the docks. People say Kane stores stuff, their stuff. He doesn't want anyone to see. I heard it from a guy who used to work for him." Lily's eyes widened. "A warehouse? That could be it." "Can you show me?" she asked. Joe hesitated. "It's dangerous, kid. Kane's got people watching." If you get caught. He didn't finish, but Lily knew what he meant. I have to try, she said. Joe sighed, then nodded. All right. Tonight. Meet me by the river at midnight, but you better be ready. Lily's heart raced. A warehouse, a secret, a chance to find the truth. But Victor's warning echoed in her head. You'll wish you hadn't. She pushed it away. She wasn't stopping now. That night, Lily waited by the river, her truth book in her pocket. The city was quiet, the air cold. She heard footsteps and saw Joe's familiar figure. Ready? He asked. She nodded, her heart pounding. They started walking toward the docks, the shadows growing darker. Up ahead, the warehouse loomed, old and rusted, with a single light burning inside. Lily's stomach twisted. This was it. The truth was in there, but as they got closer, she saw something that made her freeze. A man stood by the door, tall and broad, with a scar across his face. He was watching the street, his hand on something under his jacket. A gun. Lily's breath stopped. Joe grabbed her arm, pulling her back into the shadows. We can't go in, he whispered. Not now. But Lily's eyes were locked on the warehouse. The truth was so close. She couldn't turn back. What would she do? Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The warehouse loomed in front of her, its rusted walls barely lit by the dim streetlight. The man with the scar stood by the door, his eyes scanning the dark like a hawk. His hand rested on something under his jacket, and Lily didn't need Joe to tell her it was a gun. She crouched in the shadows behind a stack of crates, Joe's hand tight on her arm. We can't go in, he whispered, his voice low and urgent. That guy's bad news. We need to leave. Now. But Lily couldn't move. The warehouse was her last chance. Everything she'd learned, Victor's secret conversation, the dusty boxes, the fake spreadsheet pointed to this place. If Victor was hiding the truth about Kane Cares, it was here. She could feel it. Her truth book, tucked in her pocket, seemed to burn against her side, urging her to keep going. I have to try, she whispered back, her voice shaky but firm. Joe's eyes widened. Lily, this ain't a game. If he catches you... I know, she cut him off. But I'm not stopping. Not when I'm this close. She looked at the warehouse, then at the man. He was big, but he wasn't moving. He just stood there, watching the street. Maybe she could sneak past him. Maybe there was another way in, Joe sighed, his shoulders slumping. You're as stubborn as a mule, he muttered. Fine, but we do this smart. Follow me. Joe led her along the edge of the docks, staying low. The air smelled of salt and oil, and the water lapped softly against the pier. They moved from shadow to shadow, dodging crates and barrels. Lily's sneakers were quiet, but every step felt like it echoed. Her eyes stayed on the man with the scar. He hadn't seen them yet, but one wrong move could change that. Joe stopped behind a rusted shipping container and pointed to the side of the warehouse. There, he whispered. A broken window. Small, but you might fit. I'm too big. Lily's stomach flipped. A window? Alone? She looked at the warehouse, then back at Joe. His face was serious, his eyes full of worry. You don't have to do this, he said. We can come back later with a plan. But Lily shook her head. There might not be a later, she said. Victor knows I'm looking. He'll cover his tracks. Joe didn't argue. He just nodded. Be quick, and if anything feels wrong, you run. Got it? Got it, Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt. She crept toward the warehouse, her heart racing. The window was high, just above a pile of old crates. She climbed carefully, wincing as the wood creaked. The man with the scar didn't move. She reached the window and peered inside. It was dark, but she could make out stacks of boxes and crates, like the room Victor had shown her. Her fingers fumbled with the window's edge. It was stuck, but she pushed hard, and it gave way with a soft scrape. She froze, waiting for the man to react. He didn't. She was still safe. Lily squeezed through the window, her small frame barely fitting. She dropped to the floor inside, landing softly on her knees. The warehouse was cold and smelled like dust and metal. Her eyes adjusted to the dark, and she saw rows of boxes, some labeled like the ones in Victor's office. Food, clothing, supplies. But something was different. The boxes here were newer, cleaner, like they'd been moved recently. And there were other things, big machines in the corner, covered with tarps, and a table with papers scattered across it. Lily's heart raced. This was it. She moved quietly, staying low. She reached the table and grabbed a paper. It was a list of numbers and names, with Kane Cares written at the top. Her hands shook as she stuffed it into her pocket. She didn't have time to read it now, but it might be proof. She opened a nearby box, expecting blankets or cans. Instead, she found bags of white powder. Her breath stopped. She didn't know what it was, but it wasn't food or clothes. It looked wrong, dangerous. Before she could think, a noise made her freezy, low hum, like a machine starting. She ducked behind a crate, her heart pounding. Footsteps echoed, heavy and slow. Someone was in the warehouse. She peeked out and saw a man-ot. The one with the scar, but someone else, wearing a dark jacket. He was checking the boxes, muttering to himself. Lily's mind raced. She needed to get out, but the window was too far. And then she heard another sound, voices, outside the door. The man with the scar was talking to someone. "Boss says move it tonight," a voice said. "No mistakes." Lily's blood ran cold. Move it? Move what? The powder? The boxes? And who was boss? Was it Victor? She needed more proof, but she was trapped. The man in the jacket was getting closer, his flashlight beam sweeping the room. Lily pressed herself against the crate, barely breathing. If he found her, she didn't know what would happen. She thought of Victor's warning. "You'll wish you hadn't." Had he known she'd come here? Was this a trap? The flashlight beam passed inches from her face. Lily's heart stopped. She closed her eyes, waiting for the man to grab her. But he didn't. He turned away, muttering, "Stupid job." Lily let out a shaky breath. She had to move. Now. She crept toward the window, staying low. The voices outside were louder, arguing about something. She reached the crates under the window and started climbing, her hands slippery with sweat. She was almost there when her foot slipped. The crate wobbled, and a loud creak echoed through the warehouse. The man in the jacket spun around. "Who's there?" he shouted, his flashlight swinging toward her. Lily scrambled up, her heart in her throat. She dove through the window, scraping her arm on the jagged edge. She landed hard outside, pain shooting through her knees. "Stop!" a voice yelled from inside. Lily didn't look back. She ran, her legs burning, toward the shadows where Joe was waiting. Joe grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the container. "You okay?" he whispered, his eyes wide. Lily nodded, gasping for air. "They saw me," she panted. "We gotta go." Joe didn't ask questions. He led her through the docks, weaving between crates and barrels. Behind them, shouts echoed and flashlights cut through the dark. Lily's arms stung, and her pocket crunched with the paper she'd taken. She didn't know what it was, but it was something. Proof, maybe. They didn't stop until they reached the river, hidden by the tall grass. Lily's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground, her chest heaving. Joe crouched next to her, his face grim. "What happened in there?" he asked. Lily pulled the paper from her pocket, her hands shaking. It was crumpled, but she could still read it. The list had names, dates, and numbers, big numbers, like money. One name stood out. V. Kane. Victor. "I found this," she said, showing Joe. And there was stuff. Not food. Powder. In bags. Joe's eyes widened. "Powder?" he said, his voice low. "That's bad, Lily. Real bad." He looked at the paper, his face hardening. "This is something, but it's not enough. You need more to take him down." Lily nodded, her mind racing. She knew he was right. The paper was a clue, but it wasn't proof. Not yet. What now? She asked, her voice small. Joe rubbed his face, thinking. You can't go back to your alley, he said. If they saw you, they'll come looking. You need to hide. Lily's stomach dropped. Hide? She'd always been invisible, but this was different. This was running. Where? She asked. Joe hesitated. There's a place, he said. An old shelter, abandoned. Nobody goes there. I'll take you. Lily nodded, but her mind was on the paper, the powder, the warehouse. Victor was hiding something big, and she was closer than ever to proving it, but she was also in danger. She thought of the man with the scar, the flashlight, the voices saying, "Move it tonight." What were they moving? And why was Victor's name on that list? Joe helped her up, and they started walking, sticking to the dark alleys. The city felt different now, like it was watching her. Every noise made her jump. When they reached the abandoned shelter, it was a crumbling building with broken windows and a sagging roof. Joe pushed open a door, and they slipped inside. The air was damp, and the floor creaked, but it was safe. For now. Stay here, Joe said. I'll check the streets, see if anyone's looking for you. Don't go out. Lily nodded, clutching her truth book. Joe left, and the shelter went quiet. Too quiet. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, and opened the paper again. The numbers blurred in the dim light, but Victor's name stood out like a warning. She added it to her truth book, writing every detail she could remember: the warehouse, the powder, the men. Her hand shook as she wrote. She was scared, but she was angry too. Victor thought he could scare her off. He was wrong. Hours passed, and Lily's eyes grew heavy. She didn't want to sleep, but her body was tired. She curled up in a corner, her truth book under her arm. Just as she started to drift off, a noise jolted her awake, a soft creak, like a footstep. Her heart raced. She sat up, straining to listen. Another creak, closer this time. Someone was in the shelter. Lily grabbed her truth book and crept toward a broken window, her breath shallow. She peered out, expecting Joe. But it wasn't him. A man stood outside, his face hidden in the shadows. He was tall, broad, and his hand rested on something under his jacket. Lily's blood froze. It was the man with the scar. He'd found her. Lily's heart stopped as she stared at the man with the scar outside the abandoned shelter. His silhouette was sharp against the moonlight, his hand resting on the bulge under his jacket. The creak of his footsteps echoed in the silence, each one closer than the last. She clutched her truth book, her breath shallow, her mind racing. How had he found her? Had someone seen her at the warehouse? Or had Victor sent him? The paper she'd taken, with Victor's name and those mysterious numbers, felt heavy in her pocket. She was so close to the truth. But now she was trapped. She backed away from the window, her sneakers silent on the dusty floor. The shelter was dark, filled with broken furniture and shadows. She needed to hide, but where? The man was at the door now, his shadow stretching across the floor as he pushed it open. Lily ducked behind a pile of old crates, her heart pounding so loud she was sure he'd hear it. She peeked through a gap, watching as he stepped inside, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. "Come out, kid," he growled, his voice rough. "I know you're here." Lily's hands shook. She thought of Joe, who hadn't come back yet. Was he okay? Had they gotten to him too? She pushed the thought away. She had to focus. The man moved slowly, his flashlight sweeping the room. Lily's eyes darted around, looking for a way out. There was a back door, but it was across the room, and she'd have to pass him to get there. Her only chance was to stay hidden and wait for him to leave. But then she heard something worse, another set of footsteps outside. A second man. "She's here somewhere," a new voice said. "Boss wants her found. Now." "Boss." "Victor." Lily's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about the warehouse anymore. Victor knew she was a threat, and he was coming for her. She squeezed her truth book tighter, her mind racing. She couldn't let them take it. The paper, her notes, everything she'd learned at it was all she had to prove Victor was lying. She had to get out, find Joe, and get the truth to someone who could help. But who? The police? The news? She didn't know who to trust. The man with the scar was closer now, his flashlight beam passing inches from her hiding spot. Lily held her breath, her body pressed against the crates. She could see his face now, the scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw, his eyes cold and focused. He stopped, sniffing the air like a dog. "I can smell you, kid," he said, his voice low. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The second man joined him, his flashlight joining the first. "Check the back," he said. "She's small, could be anywhere." Lily's mind screamed. She couldn't stay here. They'd find her. She looked at the back door again, her eyes tracing a path through the shadows. There was a pile of old blankets nearby. If she could make a distraction, maybe she could run. She reached into her pocket, feeling for something, anything. Her fingers closed around a small pebble she'd picked up by the river. It wasn't much, but it might work. She waited until the men turned toward the back of the room. Their flashlights pointed away. Then, with a quick flick of her wrist, she tossed the pebble across the shelter. It hit a metal chair with a loud clink. The men spun around, their flashlights swinging toward the sound. "There!" the second man shouted. They moved toward the chair, their backs to her. Lily didn't think. She bolted, staying low, her sneakers barely touching the floor. She reached the back door and pushed it open, slipping outside into the cold night air. She ran, her legs burning, her breath ragged. The docks were a maze of crates and barrels, and she wove through them, not daring to look back. Shouts echoed behind her, but they sounded farther away. She didn't stop until she reached the river, collapsing behind a pile of old nets. Her chest heaved, her arm stinging from the warehouse window scrape. She was safe for now, but she couldn't stay here. The men were still looking, and Victor wasn't going to give up. Lily pulled the paper from her pocket, her hands shaking. The moonlight was dim, but she could read the numbers and names. V. Kane was there next to a figure 200. Her eyes widened. $2 million? For what? The other names were unfamiliar, but one caught her eye. R. Delgado. She'd heard that name before, on the news. A man tied to bad things drugs, maybe. Was that what the powder was? Was Victor involved in something illegal? She opened her truth book and added the new details, her handwriting messy but clear. She didn't have all the pieces, but she had enough to know Victor was hiding something big. She needed help, someone who could take this to the world. But who? The police might not believe a homeless kid. The news might laugh at her. She thought of Joe, but he was still out there, maybe in trouble. She felt alone, smaller than ever. But then she remembered the crowd in the square, the people who'd cheered for her. Some of them had believed her. Maybe they'd help. Lily stood, her legs wobbly but determined. She needed to find a phone, a computer, something to get her story out. The library was closed, but there was a 24-hour diner nearby where she sometimes got free coffee from a kind waitress. Maybe they'd let her use a phone. She started walking, sticking to the shadows, her truth book tucked safely in her pocket. The city was quiet, but every noise made her jump. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. When she reached the diner, the neon sign buzzed softly, casting a pink glow on the street. She pushed open the door, the bell jingling. The waitress, a woman named Maria with tired eyes and a warm smile, looked up. "Lily, you okay, kid?" she asked, her voice soft. Lily nodded, but her face must have given her away. Maria came over, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's wrong? You look scared." Lily hesitated. She didn't want to drag Maria into this, but she had no choice. "I need help," she said, her voice shaking. "Can I use a phone? It's important." Maria frowned but nodded. "Sure, honey. Come to the back." She led Lily to a small office with a desk and an old phone. "You in trouble?" Maria asked. Lily bit her lip. "Not yet," she said. "But I will be if I don't do this." Maria didn't push. She left Lily alone, closing the door. Lily picked up the phone, her hands trembling. She didn't know who to call. The police? A reporter? She remembered a name from the library computer journalist named Sarah Chen, who wrote about corruption. Lily had seen her articles about rich people getting away with bad things. Maybe she'd listen. Lily dialed the number she'd memorized from the library, praying Sarah would answer. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Lily's heart sank. Then a sleepy voice answered. Hello? Who is this? Lily took a deep breath. My name's Lily, she said. I'm the girl from the square, the one who called Victor Kane a liar. I have proof. Will you help me? There was a pause, and Lily's stomach twisted. What if Sarah didn't believe her? But then Sarah's voice came back, sharper now. Lily? The kid who stood up to Kane? I'm listening. Tell me everything. Lily's words tumbled out. She told Sarah about the warehouse, the powder, the paper with Victor's name, the men chasing her. She read the numbers from the paper, her voice shaking, but clear. Sarah listened, asking questions, taking notes. This is big, Lily, she said finally. But it's dangerous. Where are you? Lily told her about the diner. Stay there, Sarah said. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. Lily hung up, her heart racing. She'd done it. Someone believed her. But as she sat in the quiet office, a new fear crept in. What if Victor's men found her before Sarah got here? What if they were already outside? She peeked through the office window, her eyes scanning the diner. It was empty except for Maria and a truck driver eating pie. But outside, in the shadows, something moved. A man. Tall. Broad. The scar glinted in the neon light. Lily's breath stopped. He'd found her again. She backed away from the window, her mind racing. She couldn't wait for Sarah. She had to move. She grabbed her truth book and slipped out of the office, whispering to Maria, Someone's coming. Bad people. I have to go. Maria's eyes widened. Lily, wait. But Lily was already at the back door, pushing it open and running into the night. She didn't know where to go, but she kept moving, her sneakers pounding the pavement. The city blurred around her, a maze of lights and shadows. She turned into an alley, her chest heaving, and hid behind a dumpster. Her hands shook as she opened her truth book, tearing out the page with the warehouse paper. She stuffed it into a crack in the wall, praying someone would find it if she didn't make it. The rest of the book stayed with her. She wasn't giving up. Footsteps echoed in the alley. Lily's heart raced. She peeked out and saw the man with the scar, his flashlight sweeping the ground. He was close, too close. But then, another sound cut through the night. Tires screeching. Headlights flooded the alley, and a car stopped at the entrance. A woman got out, her voice sharp. Lily, it's Sarah Chen. Where are you? Lily's eyes widened. Sarah had found her. But the man with the scar was turning, his hand on his gun. Lily had seconds to decide. Stay hidden and hope he didn't find her, or run to Sarah and risk everything. Her heart pounded. She thought of her mom, of Joe, of the truth she'd fought for. She took a deep breath and made her choice. Lily bolted from behind the dumpster, sprinting toward Sarah. Here, she shouted. The man with the scar spun, his gun glinting. Sarah saw him and yelled, Get in! She yanked open the car door. Lily dove inside, her truth book clutched to her chest. The man shouted, raising his gun, but Sarah was faster. She slammed the gas, and the car screeched out of the alley, tires screaming. Lily's chest heaved as she looked back. The man was gone, swallowed by the dark. Sarah's hands gripped the wheel, her face tense. You okay? She asked. Lily nodded, her voice gone. She was alive. She'd made it. Sarah glanced at her. You're brave, kid. Braver than most. We're going to my office. You're going to tell me everything, and we're going to take Kane down, together. Lily clutched her truth book, her heart still racing. She'd done it. She'd found the truth, and now the world would know. Victor's lies were unraveling, and she was the one pulling the thread. As the car sped through the city, Lily looked out the window, the lights blurring past. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was Lily, the girl who stood up to a millionaire and won.